Good evening, night dwellers. The clock has long passed midnight. The world seems drowned in silence, doesn't it? But some nights, the darkness isn't just a veil, it's alive. It watches, and it calls to you. Tonight I'll tell you a story so unsettling. You might lock your doors, check your windows, and think twice before looking into the mirror. Before you turn off your lights, think carefully. Because this story comes from deep within Blackwood Forest, and that forest never forgets. Blackwood Town, hidden in a fog-covered corner of Oregon, a place the world seems to have forgotten. It's hard to find on a map, and even harder to want to go there. Towering pine trees pierce the sky, and even sunlight struggles to break through. Right beside the town lies Blackwood Forest, but this forest isn't just made of trees. Locals whisper among themselves, "Don't go there after dark," and whatever you do, never approach the cabin. The cabin. Deep within Blackwood's heart stands an old hunting lodge, abandoned for years. But this cabin is not ordinary. It feels alive. It feels like it's waiting. Before you turn off your lights, think carefully. Because this story comes from deep within Blackwood Forest, and that forest never forgets. Our story begins with 4 college students, Jake Thompson, Sarah Miller, Ethan Hayes, and Mia Rodriguez, who decided one autumn night to explore the cabin. They'd all heard the cursed legend whispered around town. A century ago, the old folks would say, a family lived in that cabin. Then one night, they all vanished. No one knows what happened, but after that night, the cabin changed. Jake just laughed it off. "Come on," he said, taking a sip of his beer. "It's just a ghost story. A little campfire fun, some beers, a few photos for Instagram. How scary could it be?" But what none of them knew was that Blackwood Forest had already seen them, and it was waiting. It was 9 p.m. The air carried that sharp chill of autumn. The path leading into Blackwood Forest was covered in pine needles, each step echoing with a crisp crunch beneath their boots. Jake walked in front, flashlight in hand, cutting through the darkness. Sarah followed close behind, a backpack slung over her shoulder, but her posture was tense, uneasy. Ethan kept cracking jokes, trying to lighten the mood, but his voice trembled with every word, and Mia at the back filmed their surroundings with her phone, though her signal had already vanished. "Is it normal to have no service here?" she whispered. No one answered, because at that very moment they all heard it, a rustle. Something was moving. Among the trees. The trail led them straight to the cabin. It stood in the heart of the forest like a wound, rotting wooden walls, a roof sagging under years of decay. The door was slightly open, swaying gently back and forth, yet there was no wind. Jake swallowed hard, gathered his courage, and pushed it open. Creak! A wave of cold air rushed out, hitting their faces. It felt as if the cabin had just taken a breath. They stepped inside. Flashlights swept across the dust-covered floor, their beams cutting through the darkness like fragile threads. On the walls hung old, faded photographs, but the faces were strangely distorted. The eyes seemed to be blacked out. This isn't normal, right?" Mia's voice trembled. No one answered, because in that moment Sarah found something. On the table lay a dusty, leather-bound journal. Its pages were yellowed, edges torn and brittle. Sarah carefully opened it. On the very first page, scrawled in jagged handwriting, written in dark crimson ink, were the words, "They come at night. You can't run, you can't hide." "You woke us," Ethan let out a nervous laugh. "What is this? Some kind of horror movie prank?" But before anyone could answer, bam! The door slammed shut on its own. Their flashlights flickered wildly. beams shaking in the dark. Mia screamed because the journal on the table was gone. Then it came, a whisper, faint at first, then closer and closer. "You found us." The voice wasn't coming from inside the cabin, it was coming from everywhere, from the trees, the ground, even the air itself. Jake slammed his fists against the door, but the lock wouldn't budge. The windows were boarded shut, as if nailed from the outside, yet there was no one out there. Ethan grabbed a rusty crowbar from the corner and began striking the door over and over. But with each hit, the walls of the cabin seemed to tighten around them. Then, something moved. In the far corner of the room, a shadow, tall, thin, human, but not. It had no face, no eyes, yet somehow you could feel it watching you. Sarah raised her flashlight toward it, but the beam didn't reveal the figure. The light was swallowed, as if the darkness itself was alive. But it was there, and it was moving, slowly, toward you. Hours passed. Inside the cabin, the air had grown cold as a grave. The whispers were no longer just sounds. They had become words. "Why did you come? Why did you wake us?" Mia sat in the corner, knees pulled to her chest, tears streaking down her face. "I didn't want this," she whispered, trembling. Then Sarah saw it, the journal. It wasn't on the table anymore, it was on the floor. Its pages were turning on their own, and on each page were their names. Jake, Sarah, Ethan, Mia. The ink was still wet, as if someone, or something, was writing them right now. Jake shouted, his voice cracking with fear and rage. "What the hell kind of sick joke is this?" But then, the shadow stepped closer, and it was no longer just a shadow. It was taking shape. A face began to form, Jake's face. Only the eyes were completely empty. "Now let me ask you something. Have you ever looked into a mirror and felt your reflection smile back even though you weren't smiling? Or have you ever sat alone in the dark and felt a breath on the back of your neck, as if someone was standing right behind you, but when you turned around, no one was there?" That night, inside that cabin, the four of them felt exactly that. The shadow was no longer just watching, it was touching. Cold, bony fingers brushed against their shoulders, and with every touch it felt as if a piece of their soul was being torn away. The photographs on the walls began to change. The faces in them were now their faces, but the eyes were still dark, still empty. Hours felt like years. Jake finally managed to break the door open with the crowbar, but when the door swung wide, there was no forest outside, only darkness, endless suffocating darkness. This isn't possible," Mia screamed, and then the shadow multiplied. One became many. Each corner, each wall, now had a shadow standing in it, and every single one of them had their faces. Ethan ran toward a window shouting, but behind the glass he didn't see the forest. He saw his own reflection, and his reflection smiled, but Ethan didn't. The teenagers ran desperately through the cabin, but every hallway, every room, led them back to the cursed room. The whispers had grown into a chorus. "You woke us. Now, we are yours." Sarah threw the journal to the floor, but it appeared, back on the table, and on its final page, new words had appeared. "We are waiting for you, too." And then, the shadows stopped touching them because they no longer needed to. The shadows were inside them now. By morning, the town sheriff went to the cabin. The door was open. Inside, no one was there. Not Jake, not Sarah, not Ethan, not Mia. Only the leather-bound journal remained on the table, and on its final page, written in fresh ink, were the words, "They are with us now. We are waiting for you too." The sheriff picked up the journal and returned to town. But that night, in the sheriff's own home, the whispers began. You found us. The cabin in Blackwood Forest is still there, still abandoned, and still waiting. Someday, perhaps, you will walk along that path. Perhaps you will shine your flashlight on that door. But remember, some doors, once opened, pull you in, and you can never leave. Yes, dear night travelers, our story ends here. Or does it? Perhaps even now, as you watch this video, you hear a whisper. You found us. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. In the comments, tell me, would you dare enter Blackwood Forest? Or perhaps you're already there. See you in the next spine-chilling tale. And please, keep the lights on.